Welcome everyone to Expanding Your Consciousness. And this is May the 11th, 2022. And our topic tonight is about consciousness expanding movies. And so there were so many movies that came to mind when I picked this topic. And so the first movie, though, I find very expansive is John Carpenter's They Live. And I often recommend it to people to watch it because John Carpenter took a short story that had been written in the 1960s by Ray Nelson. It was called 8 o'clock in the morning. And he took that idea and then he wrote the screenplay for this movie, They Live. And he also he directed it. He wrote the music for it. And it has become quite the cult film because when I think, Dave, you mentioned that when it came out, they shut it down pretty fast, didn't they? So it kind of wasn't seen for a while, and then they brought it out again. What I really, truly like about this film is it doesn't beat up on humanity. If you look at a lot of science fiction films and that, they're always talking about how evil humanity is, how violent humanity is, and how we're destroying the planet. And what I like about this film is it's showing you that there's a manipulation going on. So the concept is that we have these beings that are in human form that walk among us, and they manipulate humanity. And also they're in the higher levels of government and in banking and all these other positions. So what they're saying is that they're fully aware of what's going on, but humanity is asleep. They're not awake to what's going on. So the main character in there at one point comes across these special sunglasses, and when he puts them on, it represents his subconscious mind, and he can start to see the manipulation. So he can see these things that are in human form, but he can see what they actually look like these alien type beings. And he can also see signs, billboards that say consume or obey. He'd see it on magazines as well, on television, the manipulation on television too. So it's my number one recommendation is the movie They Live. And I think John Carpenter is an insider, and he was actually trying to help people awaken to what's going on. So there you go. Any comments?
Yeah. Go ahead, Ken.
It sounds like a conspiracy theory movie.
It is, and I love it.
Yeah,
I do. Yeah.
I never thought of. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, Ken.
I never thought of religion or spirituality as a conspiracy theory, but now that you mention it, so in Buddhism, they talk about delusions. We're all living under delusions, but they don't say that the delusions are caused by some aliens or they walk among us kind of people. They're just caused by our own mind. And then, of course, you get the Matrix, which has different levels of consciousness or different levels of being, and then the reality is quite different than the impression. So that's fascinating that just should be, because I always consider those movies not those movies, the concept of conspiracy theory as political rather than spiritual. But yeah, I see your point.
Yes, I think humanity at the core is good, and that we just have been manipulated, right? Because when I think of people out there protesting and doing things that they think is right, they're actually misled but they truly are out there protesting because they want the best for best world, right? They want the best of everything for everyone. And so to me, when I watched that film, I thought, I really appreciate his message. That's why I appreciate it. So, yeah. Thank you, Ken, for your comments. Dave?
Yeah, that's I've always liked that film as well. It's got a fair bit of humor in it. Yeah, and the whole idea is that there's the manipulation, like you say, and what they've done is kind of blocked, like the billboards are the example I'm thinking of, where on one, you know, when without the glasses you see it and it's like people having fun at the beach, you know, or something like that, you know, like go on, you know, have people having a great life. It's an ad for something, but when you put the sunglasses on and you see it, it is like, what was the one that Heidi laughed at? Was reproduce and
Marry and reproduce.
Oh, marry and reproduce. So there's a subliminal message that the subtext, and I mean they tried that, and maybe they've mastered it in advertising, so that we all heard about the subliminal messages in film or radio or you know, ads, even, you know, pictures, where it was advertising something, but there was something subliminal in it. Like you couldn't see it until somebody pointed it out, and you'd see an image, a very provocative image, usually really sexually oriented, and this would, I guess, generate a response to your subconscious and make you want to buy that product. So this was taking it to a whole other level in this movie, where basically the whole society was being manipulated subliminally. Yeah. So that, I mean, we know that was going on and probably remains still. Maybe it doesn't have to be subliminal anymore. Maybe the media is so powerful that they can just be completely overt and just say, here, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just want to make one comment, Faith, before you begin. I also like the fact that they focus on Christianity, right? So there is the part with the preacher in the park, and he's trying to awaken people, right? He's trying to tell people, look, you know, we had these things here, they're manipulating us, that sort of thing, right? And that these people who are trying to awaken humanity go into a church, and they're the ones creating these glasses so people can see what's going on. So I mean, you know, just as you mentioned, Ken, it is a movie about spirituality, very much. Faith or Matt?
Well, this is actually Matt. Actually,
Hey, hi Matt.
Matt.
yeah. Comment on They Live. I agree with what Dave was saying. The point that they released this movie was quite good, and then it was pulled. So why was it pulled? So I guess they're exposing some conspiracy to it. So he managed to get it out. What impressed me about that was I think he meant these are reptilians. It was a low budget film, really, for the money in 1988. It was kind of low budget, so they couldn't do the best special effects. So it's very expensive to do reptilians. They did that in 1982 with V. So I think he kind of, I'm assuming he meant reptilians. They kind of like skeleton look figures. So yeah, I think he's saying, oh, this world's run by reptilians. So it was a real message, and that's why they pulled it. Like, why would you pull a film when it's making some money?
Maybe it has some truth.
There's too much truth.
Yeah.
Good choice. Yeah.
Yeah. That's my
what,
number one film. So
The star of the film, Roddy Piper, in an interview years after the fact, years and years after, said it's not a film, it's a documentary.
Yeah. Wow.
yeah, he did say that. Yeah. So,
Yeah, good. Yeah, it's and the local theater up here, the Rio, used to play it once a year, and it would sell out. There would be a sellout crowd
Hmm.
every year, and it was so much fun to go, and because the whole crowd was just completely into it, and cheering. Anyway, it was fun. It's a fun film. Great film.
Okay. Any other films that people would like to share?
Well, I've got a
Soylent
film.
Green. Soylent Green is a bit of a
Soylent
So
Green.
ladies wants to go next. Ladies first.
Okay, Faye.
that really shocked me.
So the movie Soylent Green, just so our viewers know.
I think it's 1972, around there.
Yes,
With Charlton Heston
that's right.
and Edgar G. Robinson.
Hmm.
I never saw that one, so tell us about it, Faith.
Yeah.
Well, it's a dystopian movie, and I'm trying to remember where they were. A lot of people were living on the street. It was like in the what year was it? 2022, I think it was.
You know what? I think it was. It was 2022.
Really?
It's
Yeah,
a
crazy.
futuristic film, yeah.
And it
And,
was-
Frightened. I'm frightened.
so they had the demise pill, and they had, you know, the women living in these corporate buildings.
Yeah. Slaves, kind of, yeah.
They were for the more wealthy men, like they were there, and they were referred to as furniture. Like
Yeah.
women's liberation movement really took a backward, step. And there was a lot of poverty, and there were these tractors that were going and, shoveling people up and bringing them off to some place to be processed, I guess, like cattle for meat and for human consumption. But nobody knew. They were being fed by the government, these wafer things. There were high protein bars, and they call them Soylent Green.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So so why would you say that's a consciousness expanding film?
Well, it's just saying that not to rely on the government, just to be aware of that your government is not always looking out for your best interest.
Yeah.
Is that a conspiracy theory? No, it isn't. So we all know how that goes, right? So
Maybe you're ready for the message at that time. So it's conscious expanding for you at that time.
yeah,
Yeah.
because I didn't know anything about that. I mean, I don't know. Is it consciousness expanding? Maybe, because I don't really label it. It's just like I just never thought like that. I never thought that the government would do anything like that. Like,
Yeah.
just beyond my realm of comprehension. The government's supposed to protect its people, right? But it's the shepherd in wolf's clothing, I guess. Sorry,
Or the
the
sheep.
wolf in shepherd's clothing, So yeah, well, what do you say, right?
Yeah, there was quite a few films in the late 60s, early 70s that had a message, that they were trying to warn people about the dangers of overpopulation and, environmental catastrophe. And this is, the result of mismanagement, I guess. And,
Yeah.
Management of the herd.
it could happen. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I just
yeah,
don't-
they were taking, I guess, people. This is interesting, part of it, that if you wanted to exit, right, and this is what Edward G. Robinson, his character did. He felt he was old enough, he'd lived his life, and he said, okay, so they had a facility you could go to, and you would take some drug and you'd watch some beautiful film of what the earth was like before all of this catastrophe, and then you would exit. But what would happen was, with your body, would be taken away and then processed and turned into these little protein pills.
Oh, stop it, Dave. You're making me hungry. Stop.
Yeah. So
Okay. All
I
right.
guess I never would have thought in a million years that that could actually come true, or you have to wonder if this is predictive programming or if they're, you know, warning us or, yeah, exactly, like that this is what they want maybe or at some level, or I don't know.
Well, at some level, they kind of, I mean, euthanasia is getting more prevalent and they're, you know, allowing people to make that decision and exit at their, whenever they want to, I guess. And
Yeah,
Which our neighbor did a couple of years ago. She made that decision. Yeah.
Yeah, I told her.
did she have serious health issues or?
She had MS,
she had MS and
Yeah.
it was,
but it wasn't serious enough for her to do assisted suicide in Canada because she applied for it. So she went to Switzerland, I think Switzerland.
somewhere, yeah, like that.
Yeah.
Where it was legal.
See, what
But,
that indicates
can
though
we-
is that Canadian government truly cares about the people and they're working very hard to solve our problems by
Yeah.
preventing people from committing suicide because the government cares so much for us.
Yeah, because then we don't have to pay as much taxes, right, to take care of these people.
All right, enough. Okay, so let's talk about more uplifting films that expand consciousness.
Okay, I've got an uplifting one for
What
you.
about Ghost? That movie.
Well, you
Ghost.
already had your turn. What about my turn?
Okay, Matt.
My film is Altered States from 1981.
All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, so I was 21 years old. And in my
John
teen
C.
years,
Lilly.
just shortly before that, living with my parents, my dad gave me the book Center of the Cyclone by John Lilly.
Yeah, we have it. Yeah.
So my dad was into this stuff, and my dad really praised these sensory deprivation tank LSD experiments. So I had a lot of respect for it, right? So I went to this film, didn't know too much about it. And it kind of describes this transformation. Like John Hurt was a nobody actor. This made him a star. So
Yeah.
then they had a star for the film. Like this, the film was quite a hit in 1981. It started off as just another film, but he has this transformational experience where his body physically transforms.
Yeah.
You know, and being a 21-year-old, I was adult enough, you know, to know, I realized, you know, this is just fiction. This is a fiction film. But really, it had a transformational effect on myself at the time. It set me off in this whole spiritual phase because that time I was reading Carl Jung, his Memories, Dreams, and Reflections, and that was a trigger. Just whoa! I remember it's March of '81, and I was in the spiritual phase until August, but that got me going. And I saw it a few times. It just had a really deep effect on him. So films that expand your consciousness, that expanded my consciousness, really literally. I
Yeah.
remember the date, March 4th, 1981, when I had this.
I'm
big
gonna check
challenge.
that out.
Yeah, like I had various periods in my life that are really seared in my memory.
Wow, that's
Yes.
great.
Yeah, it's kind of an uplifting experience, but that's what really got me going. Great film, yeah.
Yeah.
It's good special effects too for 1981. All of his LSD visions and stuff, and his dad dying experience. That it was really good, really inspiring.
Do you remember who directed it?
No, I wouldn't remember stuff like that.
It wasn't Ken Russell, was it?
Oh, I just remember John Hurt.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah,
And-
that's all I
and-
remember.
Oh, is he a
Kathleen.
actor?
Yeah,
Kathleen.
that's what made him famous.
Okay.
Yeah, they make him a bit odd or crazy, a bit crazy. And yeah, which really doesn't come across in his book, right?
Well, in a Hollywood film, you have to have a
Yeah, yeah, I realize that.
drama.
Yeah, but yeah, it was very interesting. It did, you know, referred to John C. Lilly heavily. John C. Lilly found these sensory deprivation, a sensory deprivation tank, I think in Stanford. And he started experimenting with it, just trying to go into deep meditation. John C. Lilly was an amazing, like high level, went into higher realms of
I
meditation.
think so.
And he was recognized by high lamas as somebody who was highly realized.
Yeah, like in his book, he recalled that his guides would take him to where Earth began and when Earth ended.
Yeah,
It's that big, like seeing the Big Bang. He saw the Big Bang. That's really impressive.
And he started doing, you know, like ketamine and LSD in these sensory deprivation environments. And I think he discovered that ketamine was the most powerful dissociative drug that he ever took, and he would absolutely not be anywhere near where he was physically, and encountered some amazing entities. And
Yeah.
one of the interesting things I found was that sort of there was this presence that kind of laughed at him and said, "Oh, you're, so insignificant, and we're turning you all into solid state beings."
Yeah. Yeah.
So he, kind of,
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at how integrated we're becoming with our technology, and they want
Dave, you're
to,
influencing me. Now I want to take LSD and a sensory deprivation tank, or that other drug you mentioned. Now I want to do
Okay,
it next
Matt.
week. Because I have a connection. I know a guy who gets a deal on sensory deprivation tanks.
Oh, I was wondering
well,
about the sensory deprivation thing.
the place here, what is it? Float House, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The float
They
house.
got a huge picture of John C. Lilly in their lobby.
Really?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
when I
Yeah.
went in, I said, "Oh, I've read this book." He said, "Really?" Because he says it seemed like hardly anyone had read John C. Lilly's book. So,
Yeah.
But I think you might have to pay somebody off and have them, guide you or sit with you for any experimentation, and that they don't want you
yeah,
coming in high or experimenting with drugs and in that, because it's too unpredictable.
yeah. They,
No.
Well, I have my ways.
okay. Ken, do you have any movies you'd like to share?
Well, I have a movie but before it was a movie, it was an LP. It's Andrew Lloyd Webber's Jesus Christ Superstar.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
So the basis of that was it's called the eschatological approach to Christianity, which means you take the view of a first century Jew living in Jerusalem, and then how did it look to them? And then Andrew Lloyd Webber, these guys were teenagers when they wrote this thing. I can't believe the
Wow.
level of talent they had.
Yeah.
And I had memorized the whole thing. At that time, I was an arrogant atheist. And I used to say things like, "I have faith that there's no God." I'm so sophisticated. And then along comes Jesus Christ Superstar. And I just loved this thing. I can still remember most of the words. And if it was playing, I could sing along. It really hooked me.
Yeah.
And I found it inspirational. So I still have what I consider to be a close relationship with Jesus and Mary. That's about it for Christianity, but I don't think it gets better than those two if you're into Christianity.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I like Frank Capra films, right? Because he does put, his Catholic values in his films, right? So It's a Wonderful Life, I think, is a great film.
Yeah, that was a great film.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a beautiful film by him.
Yeah.
And You Can't Take It With You, about the, money and greed and all that. And he has this kooky family in there that, just enjoy life, right?
Hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, Jesus Christ Superstar was it was so huge. I was in high school, Cathedral Boys Catholic
Perfect.
High School.
Perfect.
Yeah, and we we had religion class, anyway, I can't remember the priest's name, but he played it. We played it over a course of a few months, whatever, because our classes were only so long. But we played it, and he said, "Yeah, okay, this is interesting." And yeah, we loved it. I mean, it was the first album I ever stole. Good Catholic
Really
boy,
weird.
eh? Good Catholic boy. Oh, it's Jesus Christ Superstar, you know. And I pulled it out. I stole it out of Woolco, and but you know, I actually played it over and over and over again. So yeah, I loved it. It was amazing music, great, and it made you think. You know, it brought it, you know, kind of brought the Passion of Christ alive. But the thing our priest told us, and he said, this is important. He said, this is portraying Jesus, the man, you know,
Yeah.
the human.
Yeah.
But it's not showing his divinity enough, right? For his, you know, for what he, you know, and so that I've thought about it often, you know, ever since. So it's, you know, it's interesting to contemplate these things, Jesus the man and Jesus the divine, the divine Christ. And so yeah, that great, yeah, huge, big influence on me as well. And yeah.
It's cool to hear that there's a priest and in school who actually had an open enough mind to teach teenagers something beautiful. Because sometimes if you just go, this is the way it is,
Yeah.
the teenagers go, that's the way it was. I'm out of here, baby. And he was smart enough to not have that happen.
Yeah, yeah. And it was interesting that at that time, how you know, some of these priests were opened up and you know, looking at what was happening in music and the politics of the time, and they weren't closed off. It was pretty good. Actually, one of my teachers there taught us some real basic meditation techniques, and he would start his class with a meditation. So there were these teachers who had obviously been influenced, you know, and I think about it, the time frame. So they would have been, who knows who influenced them, like maybe Ginsberg or the writers, the beat poets of the time, Kerouac and whatever, and then what was happening with Indian mysticism. And I'll never forget sitting in my grade 9 class and doing a meditation, and you know, he was saying, okay, like, you know, focus on these different things, and he said, even like, you focus on the pressure of your socks in your shoes, right? And then he was just basically guiding us in the meditation. And I wasn't wearing any socks at the time in my running shoes. And I looked down at my sock, at my, you know, no socks, and I look over at the guy next to me, and I look down and I look at my socks, and he looks at him, and he just starts cracking up. And anyway, but what we did get into some really cool meditative states, you know, at Cathedral Boys High School, Catholic. Yeah, it was an interesting time. So I guess it's my turn, is it?
Yeah,
For a movie suggestion. So yeah, the Frank Capra film, Lost Horizon.
Yes.
I don't know if anybody's familiar with that.
Yeah. Ronald Coleman, right?
Ronald Coleman, yeah. James Hilton was the author of the book, so it was a film adapted on that. And it's a story of a British diplomat. I guess he's in China during upheavals, the Great Revolution, and he and a group of people end up getting kidnapped, and the pilot takes them into the Tibetan mountains, I think, or Himalayas, somewhere, you know, way up into there. And they're rescued by a group of people who take them into a valley that has been completely shut off from the rest of the world for hundreds and hundreds of years. And they soon discover that there is a Lama who has been living there and has It's like a Shangri-La. It's like a, you know, it is, that's what I think they
Yeah,
call
it
it.
is Shangri-La.
Or the Valley of the Blue Moon or something. Anyway, it's just this beautiful film where he and his party, you know, are exposed to this society, and it's very Buddhist. You know, they soon discover that they're completely at ease and in bliss and happy and enjoying basically the middle path is the message that comes through in this. It's everything's in moderation, you know, moderately, just a middle pathway of life. And so the kidnapping was all done, actually, was all planned. They had tried to get this particular person into the valley because by the Lama, who was highly realized, he would still get in touch with the outside world through porters and their exchange of, because the valley they were in was rich with gold, and they would exchange gold for things that they wanted, but nobody on the outside knew where the valley was. Anyway, Ronald Colman, he, you know, has this relationship with this Lama, and the Lama tells him the story of the original priest who came to the valley and started this, you know, this basic, it was a monastery pretty much. And after a while, he realizes that the priest he's telling him about is him. The Lama is this priest who came, and he's like 300 years old.
Yeah.
And he's just like this amazing character. And Ronald Colman actually ends up having to leave the valley, but he finds his way back. And the Lama wanted him to take over his position in the monastery, because he knew he was because of the things he had written. He said, "This is the guy that's, you know, should take over," and eventually he does. And it's kind of an adventure story, but it has this really wonderful message, and it's kind of romantic, but it always had a real deep meaning for me. It's that, yeah, this is the way we should live. I thought, you know, in a real beautiful, peaceful valley, unaffected by the world.
Faith or Matt?
Anybody else familiar with that film, Lost Horizon?
Oh, it is a lovely film.
Yeah, it's Shangri-La.
What was the year again? 1930s, right?
Yeah.
You did it? Yeah. 35 or something.
Yeah.
Ken, you talked about The Matrix, which I thought was a powerful film.
Yeah.
Because again, it kind of gets into that sense that humanity is asleep and we need to wake up.
Mhm.
So is there anything about that film that you thought was intriguing?
Well, there was a couple of things. I remember once, so I watched the thing, I forget whether it was 7 or 8 times, and I also had it memorized, pretty close to memorized it. I thought it was the work of geniuses. So I'd watched it once with my teacher, Mervyn, who was a teacher from a European mystic school. And I also attended a meeting of the Toronto Philosophical Society, who compared it to Plato's analogy of the cave. And I thought, I hadn't recognized that. I thought, whoa, that's kind of interesting. So it was really just loaded with all kinds of spiritual innuendos. But the idea was that there's a whole different world it's going on simultaneously with this one, and that the appearance that we're having isn't really accurate as to what's going on. So remember that one scene where Neo just got up. He was like, it's like being in bed and all of a sudden you pop up, and he looked around very mysteriously, and then he realized
What you do?
my God, there's a million people just like me here.
And private.
And then all of a sudden there was a great flushing sound and down he went into the next world, his next adventure.
Yeah.
And that whole, there's so much symbolism in it that
There
it,
is.
but I must admit, I didn't find it inspirational. I just found it educational because by
Yeah.
that time I was way into spirituality and I saw how these guys interpreted it. Then I saw how the Toronto Philosophic Society interpreted it way different than I had. And I
Yeah.
thought, wow, this is really a genius thing. If you can have 2 or 3 different valid interpretations, that's, you're dealing with a pretty high level piece of work. So it was fabulous. And that was my favorite movie for years and years until I recently had it usurped.
Oh,
By what?
Believe it or not, the musical Fiddler on the Roof.
Oh, wow.
oh,
I just love that. And it's about Jewish spirituality or Jewish religion and Jewish tradition.
Yeah.
But I must say, that's not what impressed me about the film. So, it's off topic for tonight. To raise consciousness is pretty tough because the audience is so full of vastly different approaches to consciousness.
yes.
So we're seekers. We're poking around, looking under bushes and trees and rocks and things and finding angles.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of people who just want to go out and have a good movie. So they don't care about all the things we care about.
Yeah.
So a person, if you're a director or you're making a film or writing a play like that, you've got to take all that into account. So to do The Matrix, which was a big success, a big seller and everything else, and a deep philosophic exercise, those Wachowski brothers were fabulous.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's an insightful film. And I think at the end, doesn't he leap out of the Matrix or something? He says something like, everything's limitless, like there's no limits or something.
Yeah.
So it's,
He shifts into a different state of consciousness.
yes.
And so that, it's anyway, I don't want to.
But they flushed him because he kind of detached, right? And
Yeah,
he was no longer a source of energy they were drawing.
Yeah.
They were like batteries, right?
Yeah.
For
generators or whatever sources.
yeah. So it's interesting that who was in control of the Matrix,
Agent Smith.
Agent Smith. So what's it? Yeah.
Well, with the machines, right?
Yeah, the
Wasn't it
machine.
about
Artificial intelligence or whatever, and
Yeah.
it somehow tricked these bio units into being their batteries, their energy source. Yeah. Well, that has a lot of interesting, implications. Are we, in that matrix? Are we, being used to supply, the energy there, or we're kind of like slaves to something that we don't really understand.
Yeah. But there's a lot of conspiracy theory around that. That's exactly what they're trying to tell us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm beginning to think it's not theory anymore, it's all fact. So anyway, that's just my view.
On certain levels, it is true, right?
Because really it is. Do you take the blue pill or the red pill, right?
And we're,
decide to study consciousness or not.
Are we living our own lives, or are we just going along with this plan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you a seeker of, self?
I took the black pill, actually.
You took the black pill.
I'm hanging myself right now.
It makes me think of something Charles Bukowski said. Is everybody familiar with Charles Bukowski?
I
No,
know.
Oh, he's a poet. And he said they didn't abolish slavery, they just incorporated it to include everybody.
Wow.
That's better. Now I feel equal.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Equally servile.
Charles Bukowski, he was like a street poet. He was like a rubby and a hardcore alcoholic, but he wrote genius poetry, but he just did it for the sake of writing. He wasn't trying to get famous.
Hmm.
But and he wrote well, Barfly was a film that was based on him.
Hmm.
And anyway, he was I've always I haven't read a lot of his stuff, but everything I've read, I've always went, wow, he's amazing mind.
Yeah.
So that makes me think of another one. I Googled mind expanding or consciousness raising films, and one of them, believe it or not, was Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Oh, yeah. I
Like a
saw
big
parts
day.
of that, not the whole thing. Yeah.
Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas about Hunter S. Thompson. He was another writer, was totally went off, off on away from mainstream philosophy and writing. Anyway, he was an inspiration for me in high school. I was kind of drowning in high school. I was like nothing to kind of relate to that made sense to me, because I could see the path that everybody wanted me to go down was not, it didn't make any sense to me. And anyway, I found this writer, Hunter S. Thompson, in the Rolling Stone magazine, and that was like a lifesaver for me. It was just like, oh, okay, I'm not crazy. This guy's kind of making sense of how what I see is crazy is what everybody sees as normal, and he's going, no, that's nuts, that's crazy, and so don't. So he had like a wild mind, and I think that was what I related to more to. I was kind of lucky I made it out of the teens.
That concept of wild versus tame minds, that's a fascinating one. And I wonder, is that a spiritual thing, or is it something other than spiritual? The wild mind versus the domesticated mind.
Well,
Yeah, that's an interesting question. You wouldn't think of Hunter S. Thompson as a spiritual person, but he was somebody who inspired and was about breaking free of the constraints of the tame mind.
Mhm.
So, I mean, there must, again, it's like the movie, The Matrix, it's how you interpret it. The individual could get something really spiritually inspiring from it. And yeah, that's interesting. Wild mind, tame mind.
I had a spiritual teacher named Mervyn. I think I've mentioned the odd time.
yes.
He died 15 years ago. Too bad. But anyway, he would talk about the process of domestication of the mind, and it was always with respect to men. So he believed that women were, I don't want to use the word naturally, but I don't know a better one. Women were naturally civilized or naturally domesticated or whatever, and men were inherently wild. And then, it's something to do with our hormones or something. But anyway, I had two spiritual teachers who taught along that same line. And for both of them, the process of domesticating a man was to emasculate him or despiritualize him. The other one was the shamanic teacher. It was a different. One was European mysticism. The other was North American shamanism. But I wonder about that. Is there any film that actually looks at the domestication of and wild mind? So I know that song, "Born to Be Wild."
Hmm.
Yes.
That definitely is a song of a wild man.
But what about virtue? What about virtue and morality in that? Because, it's interesting. I just saw someone had like a YouTube thumbnail recently, and on it she had, when morality increases, freedom increases.
Mhm.
And so in turn, when morality decreases, freedom decreases. And that would make sense if you're living in a society. If you have no morality in society and you have high crime in that, then what do? You have more police, you have cameras on the streets, you have all this sort of thing going on. So, I could see young men wanting, a wild time when they're young, but I think there's a point, even when I taught in Egypt, Egyptians would say, well, we let them, be a bit wild, when they're young, but then no, they have to get serious and, disciplined. And yeah, so I don't know.
Hmm.
Is the Taliban wild
Hmm.
or tame?
Well, I think I guess what I'd say in turn are some of these extreme protesters on the street. Are they wild or tame? Right? There are some that can be quite violent.
Yeah.
Right? Because they've been planted a certain message that, oh, they're right. And the Taliban, they're planted in their mind that they're right about something.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I'm thinking of the samurai and that whole Japanese tradition too, where wildness can be extremely moral. It's just, what is the moral code? It might not be the same as yours, but the samurai, for example, and I'm using the Taliban as wild and extremely disciplined and very moral in a kind of a weird way, but
Yeah.
they think it's moral, and it is just, I mean,
Yeah.
it's pretty serious.
I thought the Taliban are very oppressive and they're violent people.
Yeah,
They're violent towards their people.
yeah. They're
Hmm.
horrible people, but are they wild or tame?
Yeah. And are they someone's creation, right? Are they someone paid,
Yeah.
right? It's hard to say, right?
So the Taliban we're talking about they controlled Afghanistan for a while. Is that right?
Yep.
Interesting. So when they were in control, the poppy production in Afghanistan basically disappeared.
Mhm.
The heroin production and the world supply went, way, way down.
Mhm.
People, around the world had to start getting off of these drugs, these opioids, opium, the heroin. So I don't know. It's like, you look at, and then once the Americans came in, then the opium production went off scale again, and then now you've got all these young men and young people, young women, young men, people's lives being completely destroyed by opioids.
Yeah. It's hard to tell, right? Because you don't know.
It's like,
Yeah.
where's I mean, yeah, I don't know enough about it to speak with any authority, but there are some things about that situation where you look at things and you go, wow. Yeah.
What was the deal with opium? I tried that and I didn't notice anything. No different sensation, nothing.
Opium in the sky with
I have an
All
opium.
right.
I have an opium story that may put it into perspective.
Okay.
Was at a rock concert in Buffalo, Rich Stadium, and I saw this guy smoking something out of a pipe, and it wasn't anything to ask somebody, hey, how about a toke, right? And so I asked him, and he said, no, I can't let you have this. And he goes, oh, why not, man? I can handle it. He goes, no, it's opium. I went, oh, opium. I've always wanted to try opium, man. I'd really like to try it. And so he looks at me and he goes, well, okay, here. You know, he fills up the pipe and he lets me smoke it. And then what I thought was a minute later, I look at him and I'm going, well, that was nothing. Here, like, give me another toke. He goes, no. He goes, you've been holding the pipe for half an hour. I lost a half an hour that there was nothing there. So that's, I think, the point of opium, heroin, is that you escape. It's like a complete escape. It's not like you're not enjoying it. What you like about it is that you're not here, I guess. So
So Faith, that was probably your experience.
that was your experience. Maybe you lost an hour or a half an hour or whatever, didn't even know it. I didn't know it. I couldn't believe it. He goes, no, he said, you've been holding the pipe for like 30 minutes. And it's like, wow, okay. I don't want to do that. I enjoy getting high. I have fun,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it wasn't really a high per se, right? You don't really.
No.
Yeah.
It's like, any of the, I've never really known any heroin addicts, but, I hear stories of people like Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead and that, and he got into using because he wanted an escape. He just wanted he wanted time where there wasn't anything to think about, so it was a complete escape route for,
And he also
So,
saw
okay.
aliens as a boy. I know someone who grew up with Jerry Garcia. He personally told me he saw aliens as a boy when he was 6
Really?
years old.
Okay, Matt, I want to go back to movies. And another one of my favorite films is The Song of Bernadette with Jennifer Jones. And it's actually supposed to be a true story where she sees the vision of the Mother Mary, right? This would have been, I think, in the 1850s or something. And so, and that's where you get, and it's in Lourdes,
Lourdes,
France.
yeah.
Yeah. And so, and Matt, did you have an aunt that went to Lourdes, France and was healed?
Oh, this was a story of my grandmother.
Oh,
This is she had a lame right arm. It was very ill, and the doctor recommended having it amputated. And her husband, my grandfather, is a very strict Catholic, very devout Catholic. So he took her to Lourdes, France, from Holland. My family's from Holland. And she felt a lot of compassion in the pool for the man that was next to her. Like she was more concerned about the guy next to her. That's what I was told. And then her arm healed. So my interpretation of the chi energy was flowing through her because she was caring about the guy next to her. So anyways, my grandfather became even more devout Catholic after that.
yeah. That's it's a beautiful film if you have a chance to watch it. I think it was 1943, 42 or 43 it was done. And I just love that film. It's very spiritual.
Song of Bernadette. Yeah.
The Song of Bernadette.
Yeah. And that was, and I think if you read about the accounts of that story, the true accounts of it, that movie it didn't stray from, the story of Bernadette and her relationship with the Virgin Mary.
That's right.
And some of the priests that, were the ones who were her superiors, didn't believe her. They didn't, they said, no, you're whatever, hallucinating, or it's not true. They doubted her, but she was in a nunnery and devoting her life to, the contemplative life. And they the Mother Superior noticed that she was limping, and so she thought she was just trying to get more attention, but they finally had a doctor examine her, and she had a condition that was unbelievably, like, it was very serious disease that should have crippled her. Like, she shouldn't have been able to walk. She shouldn't have even, anybody who's had this condition would be, needing probably heroin, to not, but so the pain was supposed to be excruciating, but she was just kind of bearing up, and it was like she wasn't feeling the pain because she was in a state of grace, because she was always, contemplating
Yeah.
the Virgin Mary.
Yeah. Yeah, I highly recommend that to people if you really want to see I think a beautiful, if you want to say religious film, I thought that was a lovely film. So
Inspiring.
yeah, very inspiring.
I'm like you,
A true
and I have
account.
like Jesus and Mary. That's the connection, for me. And I think it has to do with the apparitions. Like, these were stories of actual sightings, true.
That's right.
True stories, and I think that's what drew me.
Yeah.
Drew me to Mary.
Okay. I was thinking of A Christmas Carol, because Dave and I watch it every year at Christmas, of course. And again, I just think, and I should actually read the book, because I do think there's a lot of information in these
You want to say something?
in these stories, right? And I think A Christmas Carol is a great movie about transformation, right? Going from the businessman and the greed and that, and then transforming into someone who has compassion for all of humanity.
Through
I had one more film.
And, sure, Matt.
This was 1979, the first Star Trek movie. All through the 70s, I watched each episode about 47 times in my boring teens, and this was something new. That in itself was a religious experience.
Okay.
But what I found transformative about it was there was Kirk, Spock, McCoy, everybody's there, but they had the previous captain who was relieved of duty because Admiral Kirk came, and he transformed with the star of the film was a woman who was bald, who represented V'Ger. V'Ger was Voyager 6. The satellite Voyager 6 went out into space,
Yeah.
and then came back with this huge artificial intelligence alien machine came back to Earth, and of course they saved the world. But they had this transformative experience at the end where they just the light, they all turned into light beings, these two, and then the Enterprise came through it all.
Wow. And
Yes, the ending was profound.
what's it?
Although the critics saw the kind of pen is a $40 million film. Alan Dean Foster wrote a bunch of novels, and he didn't even have the script finished when they're filming. It was kind of a whale, like kind of a slow moving. The critics said it wasn't that good of a film, but for me, it was kind of profound.
Yeah. Okay. And that was the first Star Trek film.
1979, very first one.
Wow. I didn't know it went back that far.
There you see, you forgot it because 1982 was a big success. They had a limited budget, 10 million. They got rid of Gene Roddenberry. They hired a Jewish producer. He watched all 77 episodes,
Wow.
and he came up with the Wrath of Khan. You remember that one? Big
Yeah.
success.
I don't know. I used to be a Trekkie when it came to the actual TV show.
Oh, yeah. You know, that saved the franchise. That could have been the end of Star Trek. If they didn't make money in the
Okay.
second film, that would have been the end of it.
All right. And thanks, Matt. And Ken, any other films that come to mind?
I had one just a second ago. Let me get it back. It's
Yeah.
right on the.
So Ken?
I remember it now. It was Crouching Dragon, Hidden
Oh.
Tiger.
Yes.
That one.
I
That
saw
was
that
a
one. It was
fabulous
good.
one.
I really enjoyed that.
It was great because it symbolized all kinds of experiences that human beings actually have, but it didn't look like it was all going on in your mind. It looked like it was people flying around the room and whacking the tar out of each other with swords and everything. So, that I like that serious level of mythology.
Yeah.
So when you get that and as latent as that one was, for me, it makes it easier to think in terms of, wow, that's a cool interpretation of this experience or this theory or that theory. So I like the ones that make you think.
Yeah. There's there's other films similar to that, aren't they? Where the martial arts, but they also, get into that good and evil kind of thing too, right? So it's.
I think the sequel to that movie was even more profound. It's called Crouching Kitten, Hidden Puppy, and I filmed it myself with my kitten at home.
Matt.
Gonna X you out, watch out.
Anyway,
I think we're,
Any other final comments before we end the meetup?
I think we're
You know,
picking up after.
when I looked at the list, right, there's 197 movies listed there.
Yeah.
I was surprised to see Eat, Pray, Love there, and which is nice because I saw that movie and it was the most incredible movie, one of the most incredible movies I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just profound. I mean, I just thought, wow.
Yeah.
It was a very well done movie. I was very impressed. I'm not a big movie goer, but so I'm very picky. And it was a really well done movie.
Yeah, I saw it, but I just can't remember. It was Julia Roberts in it.
Julia Roberts, yeah.
Hmm.
And she expanded her belly consciousness, because she got a muffin top, and she came from New York where you had to be skinny, and everybody was expected to be skinny, and everybody's deprived and miserable. And she goes to Italy and she lives life, and she's deliberately putting on a muffin top, and then she meets this gorgeous man and fall in love, and then they get married or something.
Yeah.
And he likes the muffin top women, so it's kind of ironic, right? That when you follow your heart and be yourself, you end up meeting the love of your life. So that was expanding your heart consciousness.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Very nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There's another movie too about the Avatar. I think it was Avatar.
Oh, you know what? I'm glad you mentioned Avatar.
I saw that.
Yeah,
I had that on my list. Yeah, that's a good one.
That was I love that movie. Oh,
Me too.
very well done.
I think it's the longest time to produce a movie in history, one of the most expensive in history.
Really?
Yeah, that's an interesting film. Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
I found it really kind of trippy, but I didn't find it that profound. I just thought it was kind of.
Yeah, it wasn't profound.
The story kind
of
was like, but it was I enjoyed it. I loved it. It was most enjoyable.
No, I thought it was well done.
Yeah.
But Dave, you and I, we're on a level of profundity. You can't expect every movie to live up to our standards, right?
But I like A Christmas Carol, that transformation, and it was a spiritual intervention that, created his transformation. He had to face his past, his present, and his future. So it was to me, that was profound.
Yeah, and what's interesting too, he says, "I'm old. I can't change my ways. I'm old. You can't." Yeah, but he does. Yeah, that's a good film.
I think so.
Yeah, great.
What about your life as a movie, expanding your consciousness movie? Sometimes I feel like I'm in a movie, like it's manifesting and the bizarre synchronicities. Like, boy, oh boy. I mean, who needs to watch a movie? Just watch your
Yeah.
own life.
Yeah,
Right.
Faith,
Like-
you've been filmed since you were born, so everybody's been watching for life.
Oh my God.
Right, yeah, if you're paying attention, yeah, your movie is pretty amazing.
That's right, because when I went to see
Yeah.
the Truman Show, I actually saw Faith in the film. It was about her. It wasn't Jim Carrey. It was Faith. I saw her. I know what she really looks like.
Oh God, you can make me paranoid now. No.
Well, hey, remember what Shakespeare said? We should say not the world's a stage, but the world is one big movie set.
Yeah, I'm just
We're all
in awe some days,
all
like
happy.
every day is like little miracles and synchronicities that are just like, wow, okay, there's something to this manifesting law of attraction thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's one thing, Ken, Dave, and Faith and I had that discussion the other day, and Matt too. That whole idea, because you know how people say, oh, Zoom is, great. You can talk to people around the world, and that's true. It's nice, right? You can chat with people, or even in another province or in the United States or wherever. Faith mentioned synchronicity, and I was thinking, well, and Dave kind of mentioned that when you go out and you meet people, you'll have people come up to you and say certain things that really stay in your mind, right? There's just something about that human contact.
Well, thank you,
Yeah.
Diane. It's
Yeah,
nothing.
that's true. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's nice to do this, but it's also important, I think, to, gather with others and
Yeah.
share
Yeah.
experiences. And, I can think of films like being in the movie theater and watching certain films with a large group of people. And it was so much fun and so much joy. And then I'd see the film later, say, by myself or with a smaller group in that, and it's not the same, right? There's
Right.
something to be
So
said.
true.
for seeing
So
it as a
true.
group. Yeah.
I think that's the same with meditation.
Yeah.
When you're in a group and close proximity to each other, that's a
Yeah, and with yoga as
whole
well.
other experience. For
It's
sure.
my experience as well. Yeah.
And
Yeah, I miss that.
yoga
it.
too, with yoga.
Ken, any comments?
The first observation I ever made about that phenomenon Dave was talking about was the first, when I used to meditate, when I was just learning. I noticed when I did it alone, it was way different than when I did it with somebody. And eventually I learned what that is. And I don't know how to say it. I'm trying to think of a way I'm trying to write a book with this in it, but you have to put it into words and it's not so easy. But it's the best I can do is we each have like a field around us. The Earth has a field of gravity and magnetic field and all that. Well, we all have something like that too. And we affect each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the closest I can come. But then eventually we can learn how to affect our own field. And once we do that, then it gets really interesting because then you can experience that field effect, I'm going to call it, outside of meditation. And then it gets really, really interesting. But it's a long topic.
Yes. Thank you, Ken. That's so true.
Yeah, it's true though, and everybody can notice it.
That's a really good reminder. Thank you.
Yeah,
I
thank you.
forgot about that. Yeah.
That's right on.
We are energy. That's right.
Yeah, and whether it's energy or not, I'm
We're electromagnetic.
yeah. So there's an organization called Heart Mass.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yes.
they claim it's electromagnetic. Okay, and they've got a lovely drawing of it there and everything, but I'll tell you, it's not. It's way bigger and better than that.
Yeah.
It's the other side. It's spooky
Yeah.
stuff. It's great.
Yeah, it may be detectable in the electromagnetic field at some level, but I agree there's something more. There's something more beyond that.
Yeah, you see, electromagnetic field can't be transmitted on the telephone. I mean, literally it can. I mean, that's what a phone is, I guess. But the kind of stuff we're talking about in a human being,
Yes.
try to
Yeah.
do that on the, there's no scientific explanation that I've come across yet.
Yeah.
I just call it shine.
Well, you know, it's my understanding as well that our DNA actually emits frequencies.
I believe so.
Yeah.
I'd like to look more closely into that DNA thing because it's the area that I haven't thought through yet.
Mhm.
Well, Dan
It
and I have
makes
a
sense.
mutual friend with a PhD in biogenetics, and she says there's kind of an ethereal DNA that goes with you after you die, and you take your birth, and that same ethereal DNA goes into your next lifetime. And that's what goes from life to life. That's actually a type of DNA. And the Buddha describes a similar thing from life to life. And there's this movie called 22 Grams, which says you lose 22 grams when you die, which could be the ghost. So maybe that's the DNA. That's just a theory.
Yeah, so those are the kind of things I want to explore. And what I've discovered so far is it's non-physical. So it can't weigh 22 grams because then it would be physical. And it
Well,
would be
according to the
Because it's
Buddha-
invisible. It's
Well, it
invisible.
is physical according to the Buddha, that the ghost.
Yeah, I think what
doesn't
they
want-
do, Ken, is what they do is they weigh the person, isn't it to do like the weight of the body and then it
Soul.
lightens by that?
It's the
Yeah.
soul. Yeah.
Yeah, they actually weighed them at death. And the Buddha stated that the deva or a ghost is a physical body, but it's etherical, but it's physical according to the Buddha.
But if you look at, well,
So-
now we're getting into another field, but if you get into different sciences, they'll say there's no physical in this world. It's an illusion, right? So anyway, all right,
Thank you,
anyway,
Jane.
thank you, everyone.